Sorry about being late, but you know, being late is a long-standing St. Patrick's Day tradition. Just ask your gynecologist. Your probability of finding a four-leaf clover is 1 in 10,000, and yet you've accidentally stumbled onto the educational pot of gold at the end of the YouTube rainbow. You must have the luck of the Irish. So glad that you're still here, and the price is not too dear. To the drinks that are cheap and the friends who will keep, raise up your pint of beer. So, do you remember last year's St. Patrick's Day video? Well, this year I thought I'd switch it up a bit and try something different. And, you know, good. Gidich Machara. Happy St. Patrick's Day and Sasta la neve Pedreg. Gidich Machara, Kane Satatu. Amegoma, Agastu, Armeshka Buali. Loin. Tabi oise ella tu biog colleen. Ferin ye. Tatu es la karama. So, being that today is St. Patrick's Day, I thought it would be fitting if we discussed this great holiday, second only to Canada in successful celebrations and liberal libations. First off, did you notice I've been supplementing my speech with some superfluous and significantly shamrocky syntax rather than just my stalwart splification? That's because I've been attempting to speak Irish, the official language of Ireland. Also called Irish Gaelic, this Goidelic language was imported in the 5th and 6th centuries, spoken mainly in the Scottish Highlands.
There can be only one.
On March the 17th, it has become a tradition to be as Irish as possible by wearing a lot of green and saying cheers all the time. Let me let you in on a little secret. You're doing it wrong. That's right, the Irish word for cheers is actually sláinte. So drink up, lads and lasses, I've got some facts to teach your asses. Sláinte! What we see as the quintessential Irish holiday was first celebrated in the 18th century by Irish immigrants in America. Yeah, they were feeling isolated in the melting pot that is America and thus had a strong need to connect with their roots and their heritage. Of course they did this by inventing a totally new holiday. But of all the days we could have chosen, why celebrate it on March the 17th? Being that truth resists simplicity, it seems the Irish immigrants understood that history loves irony, and thus they chose the day of his death to celebrate the life of the patron saint of Ireland. Proving that they marched to the beat of their own drum, they also chose to honor the man who single-handedly brought self-control and moderation to Ireland by drinking as much as humanly possible. Strangely enough, the original St. Patrick's Day being American is appropriate. You consider there are more Irish living in America than there are in Ireland. In America there are 34 million, and in Ireland there is only 4.2. The Emerald Isle didn't make St. Patrick's Day an official holiday until 1903. What's even stranger is you couldn't even get a drink at a pub on St. Patrick's Day in Ireland between 1903 and 1970, because St. Patrick's Day was originally classified as a religious holiday. Thankfully, they reclassified it as a national holiday in 1970, and now we can all enjoy a pint of Guinness on St. Patrick's Day. Let the flood of Guinness begin. Every day, an average of 5.5 million pints of Guinness are poured. On St. Patrick's Day, that figure more than doubles to a whopping 13 million pints. Not actually black, Guinness is a very dark shade of ruby. Despite being incredibly filling, Guinness is actually remarkably low calorie, with only 198 calories per glass. That's less than a glass of orange juice. Looks like my fitness plan was on the right track. If you're a vegetarian and you enjoy the occasional glass of Guinness, then you're doing it wrong. Guinness contains trace amounts of isinglass, which is made from beluga and sturgeon swim bladders. During World War II, the Guinness Corporation promised every soldier a bottle of Guinness on Christmas Day. The Guinness Book of World Records was first created in 1954 to settle pub disputes between Guinness drinkers. It was originally intended as just a marketing ploy and a freebie, but it stuck and it has printed yearly editions ever since. When asked to write a slogan for this prodigious porter, playwright Brendan Behan went through 2 cases of Guinness before coming up with the superbly succinct slogan, "Guinness makes you drunk." Tangent terminated. What did St. Patrick do that was so great that we give laud to his legacy by lynching our livers? I mean, did he get all the snakes out of Ireland? I even heard a myth that he could raise the dead. Well, there were never any snakes on Ireland. And what? Although having little or nothing to do with alcohol consumption, St. Patrick's story is full of badassery. He deserves his fame. To be efficient, let's start off with what you already know about St. Patrick. Well, let's see here. His first name was clearly Patrick. He was probably a born Catholic Irishman who apparently didn't chase all the snakes out of Ireland. His favorite color was green, and he made the shamrock the national symbol of Ireland. If it weren't St. Patrick's Day, I say you've been drinking too much. His name wasn't Patrick. He was originally very pagan. He was English, not Irish, and like most of Ireland at the time, his color was blue and not green. Furthermore, the harp and not the shamrock is the symbol of Ireland. Oh well. St. Patrick's Day fail. Well, at least you were partially right about the shamrock. It's associated with St. Patrick's because he allegedly used it to illustrate the Trinity to the Druids he was trying to convince. Patrick's birth name was Wherein Cj, and he was born in England and lived there as a devout atheist until he was captured at the age of 16. There, he was tending sheep for a druid master until one night he heard the voice of God telling him to escape back to England. Surprised he didn't think of escaping earlier, Maewyn quickly escaped to the coast of Ireland. Records are unclear as to how long he wandered the coast, wishing he had better planning skills, but we do know he eventually made it back to England. Upon arrival, having nowhere to go, Maewyn decided that since he was already following advice and having conversations with God, he might as well ask if he could crash on his couch for a while. Therefore, Maewyn went to a monastery where he remained for 12 years. During his religious reclusion, he was mantled with a more recognizable moniker. He was henceforth called Patricius, which means fatherly in Latin. Patricius, promoted to the prominent position of bishop, decided it was time to disturb the peace in Ireland once again. He then set sail back to Ireland with public disturbances on his... Patrick spent his life converting the pagans to Christianity. The Celtic Druids who were in power found this really irritating and thought that they could end Patrick's ministry. So they beat him, incarcerated him, and impeded him any chance they got. You could count on 0 hands the amount of fucks Patrick gave about their metal. They beat him, he would turn the other cheek. They threw him in jail, he would just escape again. Nothing seemed to slow him down, and there was churches and schools popping up everywhere in medieval Ireland. Despite the Druids' best efforts at being dicks, Patrick continued on his way unconcerned. After establishing many monasteries, schools, and temples, Patrick decided it was time to take his righteousness to the next level. Partially to embody the lesson of his God's ever-forgiving nature, and partially, I think, to annoy the Druids into converting, Patrick set out towards his old slave owner's home with the intention of paying him back the money he lost when his slave escaped. When he arrived at the mansion where he was kept as a forced laborer for 10 years, Patrick discovered that it was on fire. It seems that his master had heard of Patrick's success and had thrown himself and his possessions onto a fire to avoid the shame of having released such an evil man. As he enjoyed the contemplation watching the conflagration of the location of his former incarceration, he took it as divine affirmation, and in his elation he came to the realization he must bring his vacation to a state of cessation, thereby returning to his true occupation, the pagan salvation. Patrick then sanctimoniously swallowed his schadenfreude and returned to his life of saving the souls of the pagans and making the Druids' life more difficult. Undeniably worth a toast, wouldn't you think? As a final note, if you're visiting a mate on this auspicious occasion and you've had a few too many wobbly pops to be confident in your accuracy while aiming at the lavvy, fear not. A bonny lass with whom I've had the great pleasure of maintaining an acquaintance with over the years has said it's not only polite but extremely conscientious to pee in the sink under those circumstances. If a drunken piss you must take, but a mess you don't wish to make, to complete your slash and get back on the lash, pee in the sink for hygiene's sake. You've had a long night swilling grog. Now it's time for a trip to the bog. If your aim is poor, don't pee on the floor. Aim at the sink with your log. Hasta la nave padraig. Have a good night tonight, guys, and as always, party responsible, keep your friends close, and your enemies should be converted. It's what St. Patrick would have wanted. And as always, DFTBA. The relativity of hotness, which postulates that the sexiest beard in the room will make all others, even lesser beards, appear less sexy.
Back to you, CJ.